Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us on this very, very special evening because I am very privileged to introduce Wendy Mitchell, who is an author, TV star, celebrity, and I will let Wendy tell you about her story because I have to confess, I've not read both her books. I've listened to both her books on audio. So Wendy keeps me company on my long journeys. They're amazing two books. The first one, Somebody Who I Used to Know, and the most recent one, which is What I Wish Everybody Knew About Dementia. And I do know Wendy's got another book out in June. So I'll do a little plug there. So Wendy, I hand over to you. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
When people hear the word dementia, they think up images of the end stages. Well, it has to have a beginning and a middle, and so much life still to be lived before the end stages. I'm here to show you that a diagnosis can be the beginning of a new journey, not one that anyone would wish to have, but a journey of adapting. And if you think of a diagnosis like this, it can still be filled with laughter, with new opportunities, which can in turn help with the daily struggles we inevitably have to face. But in order to do this, we have to have the support and help from all those around us. So excuse me for reading my words, but if I don't, I'll get distracted and I'll simply start waffling. I thought it was the end back in July 2014 because no one told me any different. I was given a handshake, a sad look, and discharged by the consultant who diagnosed me. No words of encouragement, no support in how to adapt. So I thought my life was over. But once me and my daughters got our heads around the diagnosis, I wasn't prepared to accept it was the end. My mantra throughout life has always been, there's always a way to overcome any problems we face in life. And I purposely said my daughters as well, because when I got the diagnosis, so did they. We both have specific needs and a need for education too. And yes, it was a bummer of a diagnosis, and one I wouldn't wish on anyone. But I soon realised life wasn't going to be as I imagined. But I also realised that this new life was all about adapting to the challenges that dementia throws at you and trying to keep one step ahead, outmanoeuvring and outwitting dementia at every stage. I see it rather like a game I'm playing with dementia, and I don't like losing. I'm not saying it's plain sailing, because quite clearly it isn't. But if you look at a diagnosis as a new way of living, a life of adapting, it can make life much calmer and a little less stressful. And most of all, it can give you hope. So on the 31st of July 2014, I was given that devastating diagnosis of young onset dementia. At the time, I was living happily alone in York. I was 58 and worked full-time in the NHS. And although it was truly shocking to hear such news, it was also, bizarrely, a relief. Because a diagnosis finally puts an end to all the uncertainties, all the questions about what's going on inside your head. People often ask me, what's the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's? Well, dementia is simply the umbrella term, and underneath the umbrella come all the different types of dementia. There's over 200 different types, and Alzheimer's is just one of the better known. I was diagnosed with mixed dementia, a mix of Alzheimer's and vascular. One of the most common questions I get asked is, what's it feel like to have dementia? Well, every day is certainly a different day. On bad days, it feels like a fog descends on the brain, and you can make little sense of the world around you. And one analogy I use is that of driving. When you've passed your test, you drive automatically. You turn left, you turn right, you change gear, you stop, you start, all without thinking. But think back to being a learner driver and how exhausting it was to learn to drive, having to think of how to do everything step by step. Well, dementia has taken me back to being a learner driver. And remember how exhausting it was to learn to drive? Well, it's exhausting living with dementia 24/7. We have, after all, a complex brain disease, and our experiences are individual. So imagine the brain as a string of fairy lights, each fairy light representing a different function of the brain. Some lights flicker on and off, dementia affecting our ability to do something one day, and then the next we remember. But when the light fails altogether, that's when dementia has won and has taken that ability away for good, that specific ability. And that's why I can type and others can't. That's why they still cook, but I can't. That's why I'm articulate and others can't speak. That's why they still feel hunger, but I don't. I don't feel hunger or thirsty. I can type words quicker than I can think and speak them, because that part of my brain, that light bulb, is still shining bright, thankfully. But we're all different in the cells it affects, the lights that flicker and fail. But it's also important to remember that dementia isn't just about memory, as so many of our senses are affected as well. And emotions play a bigger part in our lives. Whereas my old self could get angry at injustice, dementia has stripped away so many emotions from me. And I'm no longer capable of feeling anger. I have 3 states: happy, sad, and content. My emotions are heightened now, as they are in many people with dementia, and how people make us feel far overtakes any memories we have of what you've said, because we won't remember. I had to move from what I thought was my forever home in York to a quieter village in the east of Yorkshire. I used to live near the centre of York and the hustle and bustle. I loved it. But one of my first senses to be affected was my hearing. It wasn't that I was becoming deaf. It's certain tones of noise that physically hurt my ears. And audiologists are now beginning to realise that many people with dementia have hyperacusis, just like children with autism. And it simply means a sensitivity to noise. But they can help. If we wear hearing aids, they can tone out that specific tone that physically hurts our ears. And if we don't wear hearing aids, there are strategies people can use to help cope with those moments, like a handkerchief in the pocket sprayed with your favourite perfume. When you see a siren approaching, take the handkerchief out and simply smell it, and you can immediately feel your body start to relax. I used to run every other day, but I had to give up that because my legs and brain refused to talk to one another at the same speed. And I'd just fall flat on my face because my legs were working at a different speed to my head, my brain. I had to give up driving. Not everybody with dementia has to give up driving, but I had to because I could no longer turn right. Those drivers out there amongst you, think how complex it is, that process of turning right, watching the oncoming traffic, signalling right, changing gear, seeing what's behind you. It's a very complex process that you would do automatically, but my brain couldn't work at that speed. So really, please remember, dementia isn't just about memory. My taste buds have also changed, which is very common in people with dementia. But even more sad is I don't feel hunger or thirsty. Food is simply fuel, and sometimes I'm running on empty. So if someone is sat with food in front of them untouched, is it because they can't see it? Because you put it on the wrong colour plate? Because if we see white fish on a white plate, we can't see anything on the plate. Contrast is so important for people with dementia. Is it because they don't feel hunger like me and have to be encouraged? Is it because they've forgotten how to eat and need support? Is it because the food is on the wrong shaped plate? Because for me, I have to eat out of a bowl because I can't use a knife and fork anymore. I have to use a fork and a spoon. And the shoveling things onto my spoon means that they go off the edge of the plate if I use a plate. And plus, food has lost its social appeal. The noise, the difficulty, and the lack of interest, making it a necessary task now for me instead of an enjoyable one. I was renowned for keeping Yorkshire tea in business. They even follow me on Twitter. But now, sadly, dementia has taken away that taste as well. I was hoping that it was going to be short-lived, but a friend of mine said she had the same thing happen with coffee. To me, tea with milk, as is how I used to drink it, tastes like Swede. Very bizarre. But I still love that hug in a mug. I love holding that comfort. And so now I still keep my allegiance to Yorkshire tea, and I just have it very weak and black. And I've still got my hug in a mug. I used to love cooking, but now I can't coordinate pans and timings and ingredients. And I end up burning everything if I try. And when I lived in York, I made very good friends with the fire brigade. However, when I did move, I hadn't appreciated how hard it would be to get used to a new house, a new layout, a new village. I met my neighbours by thinking their house was my house and trying to let myself in. You can imagine the shock on their face, because I live in a row of 4 identical houses. So I knew I had to make my house different because none of my neighbours were safe at the beginning. Since I've explained to them all, they've all been totally wonderful. But I knew I had to make my house different. And so my solution, because I always think there's a solution, I stuck a forget-me-not tile, one each side of my front door. And now I know that that house is my house and my neighbours are safe now. I have a tiny kitchen, and when I moved in, it had 2 doors, which used to really confuse me. I couldn't remember where the doors led to. Doors are often a problem for people with dementia. For me, I like to see what's at the other side of a door because I forget. So my solution was to remove the doors. But other people, some people prefer them closed because it makes them feel safe. I have all my doors open in the house because otherwise I get confused as to where I am and what's at the other side. Simple, but such effective solutions. It's getting to know the person and how their dementia is affecting them. Vision, another thing affecting many people. Our eyes see, but our brain doesn't interpret the information correctly. Going downstairs can be really difficult if the edge isn't clearly marked, or upstairs. It can look like a slide or an escalator. And I hope you all know that black mats in doorways are a big no-no anywhere, because they just look like a big black hole to many people, including me. Black is a very bad colour for many people with dementia. Not all, but many. My daughters used to take great delight in wearing all black when they were going out in the evening, and all I can see is 2 heads floating about the room. So colour and contrast is so important. And the easiest way to find out if a room or area is dementia appropriate is to take a black and white photograph. And if the shades of grey, black and white are really marked, you know you've got it right. If they all merge into one, you've got it very wrong, and we won't be able to tell the difference between the floor and the walls, where the chair is. So colour and contrast, so important. One of the newfound perceptions is of TVs on walls, large TVs. They're really thin nowadays, aren't they? When I was little, they used to be massive, but now they're very thin. And of course, when they're switched off, they look like a hole in the wall. So many care homes now are just covering the TV with a piece of cloth. My B&B, where I stay every month in Keswick, she puts a red pillowcase over the TV just to break up the black. And a care home which I've talked to many times in my own town, they've put screensavers on with lovely nature or whatever, that when the TV is switched off, it's not black. Again, simple solutions. They're not massively expensive or anything. Another way my vision has been affected is I don't see my kitchen cupboards or wardrobes because they're a very similar colour to my walls. So I forget there's stuff behind the doors. My daughters, when I first moved here, would ask me, why are you wearing the same clothes each day? And I said, because I can't find any clothes. I don't think we've unpacked them. And it was because I couldn't see the wardrobe doors to open them, to see all my clothes hanging in a row. Many people have said I should have see-through cupboards. But not only are these expensive, but if you don't keep them mega tidy, then they look chaotic. And mine were never going to be mega tidy. So my solution was just to take a photograph of the contents of each cupboard and stick it on the door. And it's not that I have to keep the contents in the same order as the photograph. It's just the photograph that attracts my attention to say, look in here, there's cups. Look in here, there's clothes. Again, colour and contrast, so important. At this point, I thought I'd read you an extract from my latest book, because I often talk about the gifts of dementia, which many people wonder what on earth can be a gift of dementia. Well, this was mine. Dementia can be cruel in so many ways, yet every so often it hands us a gift in the most unexpected form. It was a bright day in the garden, and the sun was starting its descent, streaking long shadows of the fence across the lawn. I was pottering inside, shuffling from one room to the other, with a cup of tea in hand, trying to decide where to sit. Suddenly, through the glass of the double doors, something caught my eye. It took a while for the silhouette to make a recognizable figure, but it was then that I saw the unmistakable shape of a man, standing in the middle of my lawn, my father. By then he must have been dead 20 years. Should I have been frightened to see him in all his incredible yet very ordinary detail? He was wearing his familiar baggy green cardigan, the one he wore to potter in his own garden. A tip of mine for visual hallucinations is to take a photograph on your phone or your iPad. And of course, if it's there, it's real. If it's not, it's dementia playing a cruel trick on you. But in that moment, I just didn't want to break the spell. He stood, just looking at me, his hands hanging by his side. I don't know how long we stood looking at each other. It could have been minutes or hours. Dementia has a funny relationship with time. The logical part of my brain knew that what I was seeing was not real. I know the disease has a habit of playing tricks on my brain. But this time, I simply stopped and stared, determined to enjoy this gift that dementia had granted me, because they are few and far between. I felt not fear, but an emotional pull to stay and spend some time in the company of my dear old dad again. And in the blink of an eye, he was gone. Another change is that I find the telephone really difficult. I never answer it anymore now. I can't see the people, but more importantly, they can't see me thinking. So when there's a gap after they've asked a question, they think I haven't heard and ask another, which means I've forgotten what the first one was. And then we go round in circles. It's amazing how people don't like silence. We need that extra time just to think of the answer we're going to give. So don't be afraid of silence. And so many NHS and other services rely on you contacting them by phone to change an appointment, book an appointment. My own GP has been totally wonderful since she realised I can't use the phone. So we agree that I email her secretary and she books my appointment, face to face, never on the phone. And when I go to see her, I take my notebook with the reason why I'm going there and a gap underneath for her to write the answer to my question. Because that way my daughters don't have to take time off work. I can go to the doctors myself and keep that independence, and yet I can show my daughters the outcome of the visit. Simple things which give me independence and make it so much easier for my daughters. Over Christmas, I broke my wrist. I did it good and proper, breaking it in a few places and dislocated it. So I needed an operation. The consultant called my daughter to ask us to come in to discuss the injury. The first words he said before hearing anything from me were, on paper, you don't need an operation as you have dementia. What do you need a left hand for? And as you can imagine, I was stunned. I couldn't find the words to say. Luckily, my daughter could and told him. And then I found my voice and told him exactly why I needed a left hand. And I actually asked him, why do you need a left hand? I'm no different just because I have dementia. So some days I feel like we've made 20 steps forward. And then on days like that, I feel like we've gone years backwards. But luckily, he changed his mind. I wasn't going to leave the room until he did change his mind. And I had a wonderful anaesthetist who knew that general anaesthetic is so bad for people with dementia. And he gave me my operation under day surgery, so I wouldn't have to stay in a hospital. So both sides of the coin there, someone who knew what they were doing and someone who really didn't. And that's why I was speaking in the House of Commons recently, trying to make John's campaign law. Because at the moment it's currently guidance for NHS trusts, so they can choose whether to adopt it. And John's campaign is simply that everybody in need should have a supporter with them to speak for them if necessary. Because I don't know what medication I'm on. I don't know when I last ate or drink, but my daughter does. So she needs to be my voice in those situations. And if I'm not allowed to take her, then they could make some serious mistakes in what they give me. We all know there's no cure for dementia, and the medical model of diagnosis will focus on this fact. How better for healthcare professionals to adopt a more healthy balance of medical and social model, of seeing the person in front of them, using the medical expertise to diagnose, but then seeing the person and all the talents they have, not dismissing them as no longer worth a life. I've learnt many coping mechanisms along my few years. One is the 30-minute rule for when I see things that aren't there. If I don't think to take a photograph, then I go away for 30 minutes, and if I come back and it's still there, I know it's real. If it's not, I know it's dementia playing tricks. I'm not downplaying the enormous struggles we have, because enormous they really are, trust me. I'm just saying that there are often solutions that can make life much calmer and less stressful for both the person with dementia and the person caring for them. I've always said that it's an advantage that I live alone, which probably sounds bizarre, but living on my own means I have to find a way to overcome the challenges that dementia throws at me, because there's no one there to solve the problem for me. It also means that there's no one there to move things around, because consistency and routine is so important for people with dementia. And if I find something in a different place, I can spend the next hour wondering why it's there. What is it? Having said that, if you do care for someone living with dementia, please don't disable them before they've lost the capacity to do something. Because for the kindest of reasons, people wrap us in cotton wool. You're just being kind. But if we don't do something day after day after day after day, we forget. And then you're stuck with having to do that one thing forever. My daughters in the beginning used to help me put on my coat. But I realised when they weren't there that I was getting in a pickle putting on my own coat. So I said to them that if you continue to put on my own coat, after a few weeks, I'll forget. And then every single time I want to go out of the house, which is many times a day, you'll have to come to my house and put on my coat. And they stopped immediately. So for the kindest of reasons, people do for us. But actually, it's the worst thing you can do. Help us to find a different way to do things if we're struggling. I began not being able to tie my shoelaces, and I love walking and wearing walking shoes. So instead of having to do away with my walking shoes, my daughter just laced them with no tie shoelaces. So now I can just slip them on like everybody else and still have that independence. You know, dementia strips away so much from you that any little thing you can keep doing gives you that back, that self-respect. I've had some amazing opportunities that I wouldn't have had if I hadn't have been diagnosed with dementia. So I thought now's a good time to tell you about the advantages of having dementia. You know, what on earth is an advantage? I can see you all thinking. I've done talks all over the country in many different settings. But don't get me wrong, doing all these types of events is exhausting and takes forever for me to organise so I feel comfortable. But what's the alternative? To be sat at home, alone, with dementia? Trust me, dementia isn't a very good housemate. I wouldn't be here talking to all you lovely people if I hadn't been diagnosed with dementia. I wouldn't have been asked to write articles for newspapers, magazines, be on TV and radio if I hadn't been diagnosed with dementia. But my biggest success to date has to be with the release of my books. somebody I used to know, and what I wish people knew about dementia. Both Sunday Times bestsellers. Who would have thought that of me the day I was diagnosed? I certainly didn't. But many people think my books will be just sad. But my book is about so much more than dementia. My book is about life. By the very nature of my diagnosis, my book is about the loss of the old, but more importantly, the birth of this new me. And I hope it shows how relationships change in a crisis, how new friends are made, and how adapting to this new world is the key to surviving it. And yes, my book is sad in parts, but they're also filled with laughter, filled with adventures, and most of all, that one word we never hear at diagnosis, hope. Adventures are still important for people with dementia. Every year I do something wacky to raise money. And I announced this week that this year I'm going to walk the longest infinity bridge in Europe. So it's more or less walking across a cavern on a rope with 1,000 feet beneath you. I've walked on fire, I've been up in a glider, jumped out of an aeroplane, done a skydive, and last year I even did a wing walk. And all because, why not? Just why not? People are so risk averse for those of us living with dementia. But I faced my biggest fear, facing dementia. So nothing else makes me fearful now. I used to be afraid of so much before dementia. Afraid of the dark, afraid of animals, so many other things. But now I adore animals. I love the dark. It's so peaceful. The one thing my books also show is how you should never give up on yourself. No matter what life throws at you, never give up on yourself. Other people will do that, because you never know what opportunities might come your way. Who would have thought that 8 years ago, that I'd now have 2 Sunday Times bestsellers and a third book, my final book, out in June. So I've given you a whistle-stop tour of dementia. I could go on for hours, but everything is in my books. So for now, I'll just finish with one short section from my first book, which shows the humour attached to a dementia and how important it is. Billy the cat pads into the kitchen, performing a tiny dance in front of my feet before he finds the patch of sunshine on the kitchen tiles. He flops down on it while I scratch the back of his ears, and he purrs his approval. I shake some biscuits into his bowl, and he gets up and crunches noisily on them. He's only allowed a few, as Gemma has put him on a diet. She's not sure why he's put on so much weight recently, and even the vet has commented on it. I make myself a cup of tea, and as the kettle boils, I feel Billy's tail curling around my legs, and I glance at his empty bowl. Oh, Billy, have I forgotten to feed you again? As I shake more biscuits into his bowl. Thank you.
Wendy,
Mm,
thank you so, so much.
mm,
I do love Billy the Cat story,
yeah.
but I think for me, two words that stand out in both your books is hope and independence.
Oh, so much. It's
And I,
having that self-respect, retaining as much self-respect as you can, because dementia strips away so much from you
yeah,
that holding on to any small piece of self-respect just gives you a purpose for living.
having been a relative of somebody I loved with dementia, and also as a nurse, we we are guilty of over caring sometimes. We
Yeah,
care
and
for, we
often it's to do with time. You know, but I say, what does it matter if it takes us an hour to put on a coat? That means you've got an hour to do something else.
mm.
So use the time wisely. It's just looking at time differently.
And I make notes as you're talking, Wendy, and I said to you earlier, I will never stop learning from you. Thank you so much, Wendy. I know how much this has taken your energy tonight to do this
Yeah,
for us. Um, I, I just can't thank you enough. It's been invaluable,
yeah.
absolutely invaluable.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Wendy, and we all look forward to following you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank
Very
you,
kind of you.
Wendy.
Bye
Bye
bye.
bye. Bye. Hi guys. I deliberately didn't open her for questions because it would have been too much for her, because it was taking a lot of her energy and concentration to do that for us tonight. And also, she would have been constantly reminding herself that she was joining us tonight, so that would have taken energy as well. Is there any questions, any comments from you guys? I really appreciate so many of you joining us this evening. It's been absolutely great. But is there anything anyone would like to talk about?
I think that's the biggest eye-opener and the biggest realization that I've ever thought about with dementia. And my next thing is to go and buy those books.
They are fabulous, Kathy. In all the 37 years I've been doing dementia care, they're the best books I've ever read.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they come from
Brilliant.
the heart, don't they?
Mm.
You know, and it's like the colours and the black and all that sort of thing. And it's made me think about Sheila's wheelchair, because that's black.
Yeah.
So that's perhaps why when I say, look, the handle's here, your arm to your wheelchair's here, I have to put her hand to it because she can't see it.
It's funny because we talk about what we call pressure mats on the floor beside people's beds in the back. I said, put a towel over them or something because they look like a black hole beside the bed.
Yes, yeah.
Well, I did giggle this week going to work in the care homes. The amount of carers that wear black trousers. Thought all people can see is like torsos
Yeah,
bobbing
well,
along.
it's like she said, the heads all moved, didn't they, when her daughters? Yeah, yeah, and that's quite a thing. Yeah, it just takes somebody that is in the situation and able to describe it, like Wendy. I mean, what a fantastic fortune to us it is, because she's able and willing to share what she's going through.
Linda, you've got your hand up.
I'm relatively new to this. My mother's got dementia, and she's actually 100 years old already.
Oh, wow.
And she was only just diagnosed with dementia, early stages of dementia, 2.5 years ago. But she's moving quite rapidly through some of these stages. And I'm still on a really quick learning curve here. I have got both the books, and I've read Somebody I Used to Know, and it's just such a giving book. There's so much in there that I'm learning from Wendy, and I'm already starting to apply some of her suggestions with my mother, who isn't able to walk herself. She is spending quite a bit of time in bed, but there's just still, she's just so inspirational, this woman.
Mm.
There's so much that I can do to make my mother's life more of a pleasure. And I've almost finished What I Wish People Knew About Dementia. And that is equally just an amazing and inspiring book. And one thing that I found really difficult, and I keep asking people the question, and it's almost impossible for them to answer, is that I've also seen it in Wendy, how she's talked about her days when she's her, if you like, can I call her normal self, and then her days when she's having her sort of dementia self, but she's so aware of both situations. And she can explain them and she can record them. And I started going through this with my mother, where I was thinking when she was in her sort of dementia self, I couldn't be really normal with her. But that's absolute rubbish when you start to read what Wendy says, because today I really tried when I visited mother. And while she was being quite difficult and she wasn't really with me, I started to introduce all sorts of things, like when we went to Canada, when we did this, when we did that, about my brothers and that, just to keep seeing if I could actually calm her down and bring it back. And it absolutely worked. Yeah. She was picking up on all of these things. And if I hadn't have heard of Wendy and read her books, I wouldn't have realised I could do that, and that she would get the pleasure from it, which she absolutely did, beyond all doubt. It's just
and that's called validation therapy.
Okay.
And that's picking up on the feelings and using somebody's past life story. Yes. But another, if you're saying your mother's in bed a lot of the time, look at music therapy.
Yes.
Music therapy and smells.
Yes.
You know, her favourite smells. But music therapy is wonderful for people.
Yes.
People that have not maybe spoken for many months start articulating through music.
Yes. Yes, we've got her a new DVD, and her Sound of Music's on there, so that's played regularly because she loves that. She doesn't really watch it, but she is listening to it, which is great. Yeah, I'm so grateful for the opportunity to be involved in this evening. It's really lifted me so much.
Oh, you're wonderful, Linda. You're welcome. We do this every month.
Okay.
We do this every month. Now, I did hear that somebody had a question about dementia with Lewy bodies. The person who wanted to know about that, are they here this evening?
Yes.
Oh, is that you, Elle?
Yeah, it's me, Elle, and my sister Julie.
Elle.
Sorry, I haven't got my camera on at the moment, but yeah.
No, that's okay. That's absolutely fine. I've been doing some webinars with our team members on dementia with Lewy bodies, and I've been showing a brilliant film of a doctor that's not all highfalutin, but explains it beautifully.
Okay.
Would that be something you guys would be interested for next month?
Definitely, please.
Dementia with Lewy bodies and the difference between Parkinson's dementia and dementia Lewy body. Would that be helpful next month?
Yeah, very much so, please, because it's what our dad has, and it's very complex.
Yeah, and just a little thing about with dementia Lewy bodies, and it's similar. What Linda, you said about your mum, and Wendy, particularly people Lewy bodies, they have periods when they're very lucid, know exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
And also they could do things for themselves 1 minute and not the next.
Yeah.
Which, when people don't understand, they can get really frustrated and think that they're putting it on. Because why can they do it 1 minute and not the next? And can cause some confrontation and frustration. But just to remember, between now and next month, is that it's not his fault. He really can't help it. But as I say to all of you, you're always, all of you welcome to ring me, email me. I'm only at the end of the phone, and if I possibly can, which I can't always promise, I can always meet you in the home with your loved one. But I can't always promise 100% I can do that. I would always try. We are going to arrange more guest speakers. I'm not sure they'd be to the calibre of Wendy, I must admit. I can't say that because one of my colleagues, Katrina's, might be on here and she's agreed to talk to us about dementia training. So we'll do Dementia with Lewy bodies next month. I can't remember what the date is, but we'll send that out. But thank you all so much, because I know not only does it mean a lot to me that you come tonight, but also I know for Wendy, and I really think Wendy deserves something like an MBE or an OBE for what she's doing.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So I think maybe I'll sort out how we can do that. Maybe you can all jump on the boat and we nominate
Absolutely.
her.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Yeah, love to.
There you go. So, Kathy, you wouldn't mind staying for 2 secs with me, Kathy Brompton, and then Patrina, if you want to stay with me. But everyone else, have a good night, and I look forward to talking to you all soon.